Hey everyone. In today's video, we're going to take a quick look at how to build a bot in Discord. And we're going to be using the OpenWeather APIs to build a bot that's going to be able to query the current weather based on whatever zip code you provide it. Now, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you may have noticed that I've done similar videos in the past using Python and Cisco WebEx. Recently, I've been trying to learn something new, and so I've been spending a little bit of time playing around with the Go programming language. And of course, anytime you're learning something new, one of the best ways to learn is to find some sort of side project or something that you can work on to try to apply the skills and different things that you're learning. And so, since I've done a couple of things with chatbots before, I decided I would try a side project where I would replicate what I did previously with Python and WebEx, building a WebEx chatbot that queries the weather. And I'm going to do the same thing this time with the Go programming language. However, I did decide I wanted to change it up a little bit and try using Discord this time instead of Cisco WebEx. So the intent of this video is going to be to show how to build a Discord bot using the Go programming language. And I'm going to try to do my best to keep this as simple as possible so that if you're also fairly new to the Go programming language like I am, hopefully you should be able to follow along, and I'll try my best to explain as much as I can as we go through this. On the screen currently, I have the GitHub page for the module that we're going to be using, and it is called Discord Go. This module is going to handle so much of the hard work for us in terms of connecting to Discord, handling the connections, building a WebSocket tunnel, and all that fun stuff. So all we're going to have to do is import this module and use some simple syntax in Go to be able to leverage it to build our bot. So the first thing that we'll need to do is go ahead and grab our API keys, one from the OpenWeather API and then two from Discord. So we'll start with OpenWeather since it's going to be the easiest. If we hop over to their webpage, on their pricing page, we can see that they do have a free API key that is limited to 60 calls a minute and about 1 million calls per month, and only provides access to a couple of different things, including the current weather API, which for our example is going to be more than enough for us to accomplish what we want to do. So we'll go ahead and hit the Get API Key button. And since I'm already logged in, I can just go ahead and hit the API Keys tab and generate an API key here. So I already went ahead and did this ahead of time. So you see that I have one API key currently with a name of WeatherBot, and it is active. So I'll go ahead and copy that out and we will save that for later. Next, we'll go ahead and hop over to the Discord side. Now, generating the API keys for our bot is going to be a little bit more involved. So we're going to walk through this one step at a time. So in the Discord developer portal, after we've logged in, we're going to have a blank screen saying that we don't have any applications yet. So we'll create a new application using the new application button in the upper right corner. And then we'll be prompted to provide a name for it. So I'll go ahead and name mine 0x2142 WeatherBot, and then I'll accept the terms and hit create. Now it's important to note that this application is not the bot itself. And so we'll have some stuff on this general information page about our application that we don't really need at this point in time. Instead, what we'll need to do is on the left-hand side, there is a tab for bot. We'll go ahead and click on that, and we can now click the button to add a bot to this application. We will be prompted to confirm, and so we'll go ahead and click yes, do it. And now we have our bot. Here's where we're going to start customizing a couple of pieces of things. And so to begin with, I will go ahead and specify a username. This is going to be the name that the bot displays within the Discord client itself. So I'll name this something that's more human readable, which is just going to be WeatherBot. I will go ahead and also upload an icon so that we know that we are dealing with a bot. For now, I'll go ahead and save the changes real quick, and then we'll move on to a couple of other settings below here. So for one, by default, bots are set up to be public, which means they can be added into the Discord client by anyone. Since this is going to be just an example bot for us to play around with, I will uncheck this option so that the bot can only be added by us. Next, just below that, we'll see some privileged gateway intents. Now, these are different permissions that the bot can have that give certain access to certain things. Just recently, Discord changed it so that in order for a bot to receive the content of a Discord message, you do need to come in here and check this box for message content intent. Now, the important thing to know here is that if your bot gets added to a bunch of servers, it says 100 or more, this will require you to go through a verification and approval process with Discord. The reason that this intent exists and that verification process exists is that if you add your Discord bot to a Discord server, by default, your bot is just going to receive every single message that's sent in the Discord server, which means it is possible for someone to maliciously use this to just scrape message content off of a server. And so there is a little bit of a process for larger bots to make sure that they're using this appropriately. Since the intent with this example is that we're only going to add our bot to our own test server, we can go ahead and check this box to get message content, and there is not going to be any sort of verification or approval process. Now, the one other thing I will say on this before we move on is that one way to avoid having to use this and get approval is by building out your bot to use Discord's / commands instead of building commands based on the message content itself. In that way, then your bot only receives message content whenever someone uses a / command to call the bot. That whole setup and build out process is going to be a little bit more involved and complicated. So I'm planning right now on potentially doing a second video at some point in the near future where we'll walk through how to add Discord / commands to our bot that we're going to build. If that is something that would be interesting to you, please let me know in the comments and subscribe to make sure that you know when that video does come out. The last thing that we'll go ahead and do before we leave this page is we will scroll back up top and click the Reset Token button so that we can get a copy of our bot's API key. We'll go ahead and click Reset, and we will be prompted to go ahead and reset the token, and we will hit Yes, let's do it. Now, this API key will only be shown while we have the window open, so we'll go ahead and copy it out and save it for later. Next, we can actually add our bot to Discord now, and the way that we're going to do that is by creating a URL that we can hit that'll allow us to add that to our Discord server. And to do that, we'll go up to the OAuth 2 tab and down to URL generator, and we'll have to define some of the privileges and permissions that our bot needs. So for scope, right now, I'll just go ahead and click bot, and that'll add a whole new window down below for bot-specific permissions. Under here, I'm going to check 3 settings for now that should provide us everything we need. One for reading messages, another for sending messages, and another for sending messages in threads. And you'll probably notice that as you check each one of those boxes for the different permissions, the generated URL in the bottom is going to change to reflect the new permission set. Once we have what we need, we'll go ahead and copy out that URL and then open that URL in a new window. And in the new window, we'll get a Discord prompt saying that we want to add this external application for 0x2142 WeatherBot. And we will have to select what server we want to add it to. So I have a test server for this YouTube channel that I'll go ahead and add the server to and hit continue. Next, we will have the opportunity to confirm what permissions the bot is requesting on our server. And we actually have the ability to uncheck certain permissions here and deny those privileges to the bot. Since these are the ones that I intend to have, I'm good with this, and I'll just go ahead and click Authorize in the bottom. And then, of course, we'll have to prove that we're the human and not the bot. And once that's done, it says that the bot has been authorized, and our bot should have been added to our Discord server already. So if we go and jump over to the Discord client, as I mentioned a minute ago, I do have a test Discord server that I use for this YouTube channel sometimes. And I created a new bot testing category with a single text-based channel called Weather, and it is private, and the only member of it right now is me. So we'll go ahead and hit the Add Members or Roles button, and there's one member of the Discord server, which is the Weather bot. So we'll check that box and hit Add, and we can see now that the bot has been included, and over in the Members pane on the right side, we can see that it shows that the bot is offline. So, of course, we can confirm by trying to send the bot a little message and ask if it's around, and we're not going to get any response because, of course, we haven't built our bot yet. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So we'll jump over to VS Code, and the first thing that I'm going to do is create a .env file to store environmental variables. This is going to be where I'm keeping my API keys. So we'll go ahead and define 2 environmental variables that we'll be using for this project. One is going to be OpenWeather_token, and that'll have the value for our OpenWeather API key. And the second will be bot_token, and that will have the value of our Discord's bot token. So we'll save this for now, and then we'll start to build out our project structure for our bot. So I'm going to add a couple of files. First is going to be a main.go. Then we'll create a bot subfolder that's going to hold all of our bot-specific code. And for now, we're just going to create one additional file in there called bot.go. So in order to get started with our project, we're going to have to do a couple of things. One of which we'll jump back over to that Discord Go GitHub page real quick. And we scroll down just a little bit under the getting started and installing step. We'll see that there is the go get command for this module. And anytime you install one of these modules, it's literally just as easy as providing the GitHub path to that module. So we'll go ahead and copy that out, go back over to VS Code, and I'll open up my Linux terminal real quick. And the first thing that we will need to do is initialize this project. So I'll use the command go mod init Discord weatherbot. And then I'll go ahead and just paste in the command to install the Discord Go module. And so that's going to go ahead and pull down that module and any other dependencies that it has. And if you're new to Go, one of the things that this will do is it will create a go.mod file, which is going to define the name of our module, what version of Go we're building it in, as well as list all of the different dependencies and modules that we are using within it and or have installed for it. So we can see that the Discord Go module is listed in our dependencies as well as the dependencies of that module. So now we can go ahead and start building our bot. To keep things simple, in the main.go file, the only code that we're going to be putting in here is the code to pull in our environmental variables and save those for use in the bot code, and then starting the bot. So to begin with, we will define the package name of package main, and then we'll define our imports. So I'm going to import that bot folder within our code using Discord weatherbot/bot. I'm also going to import the logging module, as well as the OS module, which will be used to load the environmental variables. Then we'll create our function main, and this is going to be the one that will be executed automatically when the module is run. Within this function, we're going to do just a couple of quick things. First, we're going to try and load our environment variables. So we'll try to load our bot token as well as our OpenWeather token. And for each one of these, for example, with the bot token, we're going to have bot token, comma, OK, is equal to the value of os.lookupenv, and then we are searching for the value of bot token, which is what we had defined in our .env file for our environmental variables. And what os.lookupenv does is it will try to look up the value of that bot token variable. And if that environment variable exists, then our bot token variable that we're trying to use will get assigned the value of that environmental variable. And the OK value will be true. If that value does not exist on our system, then OK will be false, which makes it easy for us then on the next line to just do a if not OK, meaning that the variable does not exist if there's anything wrong with it at all. Then we'll execute a log.fatal and display a message saying that we need to define that token. Now, one thing to keep in mind too is that log.fatal will log the message and then it will immediately terminate the program, so nothing else will continue running after that log message is sent. Now, once we've found those environment variables, what we'll do is we will save them by assigning those two variables that we're going to define in our bot code by using bot.botToken equals to the token that we saved up above. Same with the OpenWeather token. And then we will start our bot using bot.run. Now, this might make a little bit more sense in just a second once we jump over to our bot code and start building it. So next, we'll go ahead and jump over to our bot.go file within the bot folder. And similarly, we'll start this off by defining the package name. And in this case, the package name will be bot. And I'll go ahead and import a whole bunch of different packages that we're going to need shortly for our bot when we start writing the code. But for now, we'll create two variables, OpenWeather token and bot token. And the one thing to note about these is that both of them start with a capital letter, meaning that those variables are exported. So if these variables started with a lowercase letter in the name, then the variables would only be accessible and changeable within the package of bot that we've created. However, by exporting them, which is setting the first letter to a capital letter, we can access them outside of this package, which is how in our main.go file, we could just write bot.openWeatherToken and bot.botToken and assign values to these variables outside of this package. Next, we'll build out our run function. And again, the run function itself also starts with a capital letter so that it can be easily executed from the main function. Within this function, we're just going to do a quick print line to show that we got our API keys, just to make sure that we are passing that data appropriately, and to kind of show you what I mean about being able to assign those variables from outside of this package. So we'll go ahead and save this file for now. And one thing you might notice is that as soon as I save it, all of my imports go away except for the FMT package. Now, if you're new to Go and or using some of the extensions and packages within VS Code, that might be a little bit concerning to you. But Go is pretty strict about syntax formatting and not including a lot of fluff and other stuff that isn't being used in your code. So by default, there are the VS Code extensions for Go that you can install. And one of those is every time you save it, it will run Go's formatting tools and some other stuff across your code, which will then perform the appropriate formatting on your code and remove any imports and packages and everything that you're not using, so that your Go code is always as lean and clean as it possibly can be. Now, the important thing to note about this too is that this does work in reverse. So for example, if we had not written any imports and we just went ahead and wrote our fmt.println and then added our text in there, once we save that file, VS Code would actually import that for us automatically because it detected that we're using that. So now that we have this basic code written, we will just go ahead and jump over to our Linux terminal and give it a shot using go run main.go. And of course, we'll get our little error message saying, hey, you didn't set your environment variables and we need those to run the program. And so we'll go ahead and use the source command to set those environment variables real quick. And we'll run our program again, and sure enough, our bot.go file responds back saying that it did get our two different API keys. So now we know that we are passing those keys appropriately from main.go, which is looking up the API keys, to the bot.go file, which is going to be the one that needs those keys to run. So next we can start working on building out some of the basic functionality within our bot. So we'll clear out the print line within our run function, and we'll start building everything out. So the first thing that we're going to do is we will build out a new Discord client session. And so we'll do Discord and error is equal to discordgo.new, and we will pass it the bot token. Now, Discord supports a couple of different ways of authenticating depending on whether or not you're just doing an access token like we are, or if you're doing an OAuth token. And the way that we would usually do that with Discord is just by sending different HTTP headers. In this case, what we're doing by saying bot space plus our Discord token is actually just setting that HTTP header manually here. Next, we'll quickly check for any errors, and if there are some, then again, we will just log and exit the program. But assuming everything's fine, the next thing that we'll need to do is start adding event handlers to our bot. Now, there's a whole bunch of different Discord events that your bot can respond to and act upon. But for the purposes of this video, the only event handler that we're going to act upon is a new message or message creation event. So we'll create an event handler by using Discord, which is our client variable that we just created, .add handler, and then new message, which is going to be a function that we'll create in just a second here. And then next, we can actually just go ahead and open up our Discord session and spin up that WebSocket tunnel out to the Discord servers using discord.open. And we will need to make sure that the last thing that we do when we quit our program is gracefully close that session with Discord. And to make sure that we do that, we'll use defer discord.close. And what the defer command will do is it'll add that discord.close syntax to a list of things that need to be executed whenever that run function exits. So no matter what happens in our code, whether it exits successfully or not, once we get to the end of this run function, that discord.close will run and will gracefully shut down our session to Discord. Now, in order to make sure that our run function then does not just immediately complete and close that session, what we'll need to do is have the run function just hang out and wait for us to manually kill the bot. And so the way that we'll do that is by printing a line on our terminal, just saying that the bot is running. And then we'll wait for any termination signals like a Control-C or a system shutdown or something like that. And the way that we'll do that was we'll use the os.signal package. And so what we'll do is we'll create a variable called C, and C will be a new Go channel, and the channel will be of type os.signal, and it'll have a buffer length of 1. And then we'll use the signal.notify command, which is essentially going to spin up a thread waiting for any operating system signals like a Control-C or any other sorts of interrupt or termination signals. And once that module picks up on any of those signals, it's going to try to send that signal back to this run function. In order to do so, it needs to make use of a Golang channel. And so what we'll do is when we start up that signal.notify, we will pass it the channel that we're waiting to receive that signal on, and we'll tell it what types of signal we're going to be listening for. So in this case, I just put in os.interrupt. So any type of interrupt signal that is received, it'll immediately send that over the channel to our C variable, and then we can act upon it. Now, the last thing that we'll do on line 31 is we will listen for anything that's received on that C channel. And so what the operator on line 31 is going to do for us is just block the program and hold here until there is some sort of signal or message received on that channel. And once it is, the program will try to continue, at which point we'll hit the end of the run function, which will quit the program, run our discord.close, and gracefully shut down our bot for us. Okay, now that we have that built out, we do need to build out our function for the new message event handler. So we'll do this by building out a new function called new message. And this function is going to take two imports that our Discord client is going to send to it. The first of which being our Discord session, which we'll need to be able to pull out certain information about what's going on. The second input is going to be us defining what type of events that we're listening for with this function. In this case, we'll be taking in the type of discord.go.messageCreate. And so anytime a new message is created within our Discord server, that message is going to be sent to our bot, and our bot is going to call this event handler. Now, that does mean every single message. That means if our bot tries to send a message to the Discord server, that is a message creation event, and that new message would get sent to our bot. We don't want our bot responding to its own messages, so the first thing that we will do is we will write a little bit of code that prevents our bot from responding to messages from itself. And we'll do that by looking up the author ID of the message that was sent and compare that to our current Discord session and look up what the user ID is. And if those two match, then we can assume that the message that was just received from our Discord client is actually from our bot, and we can just go ahead and return and not do anything. Next, we'll try to respond to any other user messages. And for now, we're just going to define a couple of quick little things that we'll respond to. And so I will use a switch statement here, just because it'll be easier for us to add on a whole list of different text commands and things that we want to respond to if we want, rather than just chaining a very long set of if-else statements. And so for the first case, we will check using string.contains, and we'll take in the message content, and if that contains the word weather in it at all, our bot will respond with some text saying, hey, I can help with that. And we'll do that using discord.channelMessageSend, and then that will take in the message.channelID. Message.channelID is going to give us the identifier of the channel that the message we received was sent on. So for example, in our Discord client right now, we have a channel called weather. When a message is sent to that channel, if it contained the text weather, the bot would receive it. It would look up the channel ID of that message, which does belong to the weather channel. And we do need to pass that back when we send our message back to the user to make sure that we're sending the message to the right channel. I'll also create a second case here so that if anyone mentions the word bot, our bot will respond with a little message just saying, hello there. Now, before we finish up, one thing you might notice is that we do have a lot of things underlined in red here, and that is because Go is complaining because we haven't imported any of those modules. Now, I mentioned this earlier, we don't have to manually import everything as long as we're using the VS Code extensions. And so what I'll do is just go ahead and save this file, and if we scroll back up to the top, we can now see that all of our imports have been added to the file. And if we scroll back down, we can see that none of that is now underlined in red anymore because those modules have been imported. Okay, now we can go ahead and give our bot a test for now. And so we'll go ahead and jump back over to our Linux terminal and run our bot again using go run main.go. And sure enough, we get our little message saying that the bot is now running. So we'll open up our Discord client once more. And the first thing you might notice on the right side is that in our member panel, we now show that our weather bot shows it is online. And so to test that, we can go ahead and send a message to our bot asking if it's alive now. And pretty quick, our bot responds back with our hi there message that we had defined. So let's see if our bot knows anything about the weather. And so we can ask it, and sure enough, the bot does respond back pretty quick saying, hey, I can help with the weather. But of course, silly bot, it thinks it can help out with the weather, but so far it can't do that yet because we haven't told it how. So we'll go ahead and open up our Linux terminal once more, and we'll hit Control-C to go ahead and quit the bot. And sure enough, as soon as we do that, we can see in our Discord client that our bot now shows offline. So we do know that that session was gracefully terminated within our code. And now we can hop back over to our bot.go and start building out the code that we're going to need for actually providing weather information. And again, in this case, what we're going to be doing is just building out simple text commands. We're not going to be using Discord / commands because those are going to be a little bit more complicated and involved. We'll just create a little text command where if someone enters the message !zip, which means they're explicitly calling a certain command that they want information from, then we'll have our bot go and look up this information. And so for our weather command, we'll tell our bot to say that not only can it help with the weather, but it'll also tell people how it can help with the weather. And the way that we'll do that is using the !zip and then whatever our zip code is. Then we'll add on a new case to our switch statement, saying that if the message content contains the !zip command, then what we'll do is we will issue a call to a getCurrentWeather function that we haven't built yet. And that function will go ahead and pass it the message content so that it can pull out the zip code. And that function, when we build it, will return a Discord message that we can then return to our user. Now, in order to make this just a little bit fancier than just sending back a plain text message, we're actually going to try to send back an embedded message within Discord, which allows us to do a little bit of formatting and make it look like a little bit of a card-like format. And so to send that message back to the user, we're not going to use discord.channelMessageSend. We're actually going to use discord.channelMessageSendComplex, which is going to allow us to add a lot more fields and values to that message that goes back to the user. But similarly, this still does require that we pass our message channel ID, and then it'll also need the embedded message object that we'll build in just a minute. And so to keep this code from getting too cluttered, we'll go ahead and create another file called command-weather.go. Now this command file is going to be in the same bot package. We'll go ahead and add our imports that we're going to be using in just a second here. We will also create a constant for the URL of the OpenWeather API. This is going to be the part of the URL that's never going to change, so that's why we define it as a constant so that it can't be modified. Then we're going to create a Go data type called struct, which is just a data structure where we can define our own data type based on a combination of different field types and values. So in this case, we're going to create a struct called weather data, and this is going to be in the same format as the JSON response that we'll get from the OpenWeather API. And I'll go ahead and build this out now. And this is just going to be pulling out some of the data from that JSON response from the OpenWeather API. And what we'll do is we'll hop over to the OpenWeather site real quick. And if we go to the API page and down to current weather data, which is going to be the API that we'll use, there is a sample JSON response here that we can use to build out this data structure. Now, I won't get too much into how to build this all out, but there are actually a couple of websites that currently exist where you can actually throw in that JSON sample payload and it'll automatically build out a Golang struct for you. And so that might be one way to do that pretty easily. The other thing to note here is that my data structure that I'm creating within the Go program doesn't contain nearly as many fields as the sample JSON response from the OpenWeather API does. And the reason for that is in my code, I'm only going to be using a handful of fields from that JSON response. So I actually don't need to build out a struct that contains all of those objects. Instead, I can just build out an object that contains the values that I'm going to need and then go ahead and just ignore everything else. And so once we have that struct built out, we will use that in a couple of moments, but we can go ahead and get started on building out our getCurrentWeather function. And so we'll create a new function called getCurrentWeather, and this will take in a string, which is going to be the message content from Discord. And this function will return an object that's going to be of the type Discord go.messageSend. And in a moment, we'll take a look at what that's going to look like. So to get started with this function, we will create a regular expression that we're going to use to pull out the zip code of the message. Now, this is a pretty lazy regular expression, and it's only looking for a series of 5 digits in a row. And then we'll use the regex find string call to search across the message text that is received for any string of 5 digits. Now, if our regular expression is able to match something, it will go ahead and assign that value to the zip variable. If it cannot find anything, then that zip variable will remain as an empty string. And so the first thing that we'll do is we'll need to check and see if that regular expression was able to locate a zip code within the message. If it wasn't, then zip code will just be an empty string. So if there's an empty string, then we'll just assume that there wasn't a zip code, and we'll need to send a message back to our Discord user who is asking for the current weather and let them know that something went wrong. Now, the previous times that we've sent something back to Discord, we were able to just easily send back a string as a message, and that would be sent. But because in this case, our function has to return a specific object type called message_send, we'll actually have to create one of those. Now again, obviously, we were looking to use that message_send content type to be able to send some embedded messages with different formatting and stuff like that. However, we can actually still use it to just send a plain text message. And the way that we'll do that is we will create a message_send object, which is actually just a struct data type similar to our weather data object that we created earlier. And we'll assign the value of content to our plain text message that needs to be sent back to the user. And one of the ways that we can look at what other types of things that we can do here is we can go back over to the Discord Go GitHub page, we can click on the documentation, and we can jump to the section for message_send. And so again, we can see that our message_send is just a Go struct that's going to hold different information that's being sent back to the Discord client. That first option is just content, which takes in a string message. And that's going to be our way of just sending a plain text message back to Discord. Now you will see that the second value in that list is the message embed object. That's going to be what we're going to be using in a second to build out our weather data response, but we'll come back to that in just a moment. Assuming that we were able to successfully pull out our zip code, next we'll generate the full URL that we'll need to send to OpenWeather in order to pull our current weather data. Now the format that it's expecting is that base URL that we had earlier, and then followed by a couple of parameters, including zip code, what unit type you want, and app ID, which is going to be our API token. And so in order to generate that full URL, we'll use sprintf. And so what that's going to do is allow us to take a string of text and inject different variable values into it by placing a %s sign anywhere we need to inject a string value. And so we'll do that by, again, injecting it first, the full base URL of the OpenWeather API, and then adding on our different URL parameter values. So we'll add our zip code that we got from the user. For units, the options that exist within the OpenWeather API are imperial or metric, but since I am in the US, I will be using imperial. And then our app ID value, which again is just going to be our OpenWeather API token. So once we have that URL built out, we can work on sending that HTTP GET request. Now I will go ahead and build out a new HTTP client. And the reason I do this is just for the sake of being able to set a timeout value of 5 seconds. And so once we have that, then we'll go ahead and just use that client to issue a GET request to our weather URL. And again, we'll be assigning anything we get back to response and error. We will check to make sure that there is no error. And if there is, again, we will send back a simple Discord go.messageSend object with the message content just saying that there was some sort of error trying to retrieve the current weather. Assuming that we do get a response back, we will try to open up the response body and read that in. And similar to our Discord client from earlier, we will need to make sure that we close that object when we're done with it. So we'll just go ahead and add in a defer response.body.close here. So that'll automatically get cleaned up whenever this function exits. Now, as long as everything went well, the data contained within that HTTP body should be our JSON payload from the OpenWeather API. So we can begin to parse that and pull out the information that we need so that we can build our Discord response. So what I'll do is I will create a new variable called data, and it will be of the type weather data, which is the Go struct that we built earlier. Then we'll use the json.unmarshal command, and this is going to take in the HTTP body that we have from OpenWeather and assign it to that data variable. So what it'll do is it will try to take the JSON structure that we get from OpenWeather and match it up to the different fields that we have within our weather data struct that we had built earlier. This is now going to make it super easy to pull out the information that we need for our Discord response. And so just to make the code a little bit simpler for this example, what I'll do is I'll create a new variable here for each one of those variables that we want to pull out. And so now we can just access information from that data variable by using dot notation syntax. So for example, when we want to pull out the city name in our Go struct that we had built earlier, one of the names was just name, and that was a top level field. So in order to access all that, all we have to do is use data.name to pull that out. And similarly, we'll work through pulling out the different information for the current conditions, current temperature, current humidity, and current wind speed. Now you will notice for a couple of these that the information that we're pulling out of the JSON structure is not always a string. Some of it is a float value or a integer. And so we'll handle those type conversions here. And the reason that we will need to convert those types is when we respond in the Discord message, it's only going to accept string values. So we'll have to convert all of those data types ahead of time. So once we have all of the information that we need out of that OpenWeather API response, we can build out our Discord response object. And so we'll do this by creating a new object called Embed. And this will be of the type discordgo.messageSend. And like I had shown earlier in the documentation, there is a field type here for embeds that's going to take a type of discordgo.messageEmbed. And within that message embed object, we're going to have a whole number of values that we can put in here. So for example, we'll have a message type of type rich text. We'll create a title for our message box, which is going to say current weather, and we'll add a description saying that it's the current weather for whatever city we looked up. Next, we're going to have fields. And in the fields object, we're going to have a list of potential fields that we could add to our message box. So for each one of these, I'll fill in a name, a value, and whether or not it is an inline message. So whether or not we just want Discord to print each one of these fields with a new line between it or try to put them all together on a single line. And so I'll build out one of these for conditions, and that's going to have the value of conditions. And then I'll do the same for temperature and humidity with the string value that we pulled out of the OpenWeather API, plus a indicator for the temperature or humidity percent or wind miles per hour. And I will set each one of these to inline equals true. Once we've built that response, we can just go ahead and return our embedded message response. And so now we can just go ahead and test it. So we'll go back over to our Linux command line real quick. And one more time, we'll run go run main.go, and our bot is running. So we'll hop over to our Discord client. Sure enough, our bot shows online. And so we'll go ahead and ask and see if the bot is around. Our bot does respond saying hi there. And maybe we're curious about the weather. So we'll ask, hey, is there anyone here who can help out with the weather? And now this time our bot responds back with not only saying that they can help out with that, but also giving us a command that we can use with !zip and then our zip code. And just to test our code real quick, I'll go ahead and put in !zip and the word test, which obviously is not a valid zip code. And our bot very quickly responds back saying, hey, that doesn't look right. So we know that our error messages are working. And so this time I will go ahead and send another message with an actual proper zip code. And pretty quick, our bot does respond back with the current weather for Cleveland, Ohio, and shows the current conditions, temperature, humidity, and wind, and all the different things that we had asked for. Okay, and so now that we've done all that, we have built out a very simple Discord bot using the Go programming language. And our bot right now just can respond to some basic messages within Discord, as well as we built out a simple little command where our bot will reach out to an external API, pull some information, parse all of that, and then respond back in Discord with a little message card. I'm currently thinking that I might do a follow-up video where I show how to do Discord / commands to extend the functionality of the bot a little bit further and add some additional features and stuff like that. And again, if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing, please let me know in the comments below and feel free to subscribe so you'll be notified if that video does get published. And all that being said, I hope that this video was fun, and I hope that if you've had a chance to follow along, that everything's been working for you, and hopefully the stuff that I've said today has made some amount of sense. I will also have a write-up on my blog, so if you need additional information or just like reading text-based instructions rather than just the video, please feel free to check that out. There will be a link in the description. And so with all that said, that's all I had for this video today, and I want to thank you so much for watching.